Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Before we go any further, we'd just like to point out that this is a putty-free zone. Now, we've featured Verdant's double IPA for the last couple of years on the podcast, but enough is enough. We're all puttied out, so not this year. There's no putty on this episode of Daftaboutcraft. And with that, welcome to episode number 55 with me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
And a very happy new year to you. It seems like late to be saying Happy New Year, doesn't it, Dave? But it is our first episode of 2024.
Well, as we sort of said at the end of 2023, we're going to give ourselves a little break to try and get back on schedule. So fingers crossed we'll start going regular. But the upshot of that was, yes, we didn't do anything early Jan. Although January feels like it's about 74 days long by the time you get to the end of it anyway.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? How was your Christmas? Or can you remember back that far? It seems like an age ago, doesn't it?
It wasn't too bad, but unfortunately the house was beset by illness. I think all three of us essentially were ill at various points in and around Christmas. So it was nice, and obviously it was Bob's first Christmas, but it was tiring because no one was particularly well. What about yourself?
It was fine from what I remember. Yeah, it all passed without too many drama or anything. Had some nice beers, nice food, bit of time off work, and, here we are, New Year, raring to go with the podcast. It's a good one this time. We've got some really good stuff. Our main interview is with Hideaway Brewing from Salford in Manchester, and we're speaking to Dan, who founded the brewery and does all the brewing, does everything. A lot of the breweries we talk to are one-man bands or husband and wife teams, and Dan is another example of that. So looking forward to trying one of his beers and chatting with Dan. Got a triannuary special, Dave. We're looking forward to this.
Yes, so there is a subtle difference to Brew to Me. Brew to Me, we go and find a brewery and that we've not had before. Same principle applies, but we actually thought, given it's January and it's triannuary time, we try and sort of find something even more different than that. I don't know what you've got, but I've successfully managed to do this because I found a brewery in Leeds who do alcoholic ginger beer, which I was very unaware of. Award-winning alcoholic ginger beer, it should be said.
So it's like a double whammy, really, because it's a style of beer you've not had before, alcoholic ginger beer, and it's a brewery you've not had anything from before either.
Exactly. So we just thought, different way of showing triannuary rather than doing a sort of Brew to Me special, which we will probably do within the next few months anyway, because
exactly.
we seem to have, fingers crossed, looking at our emails and our Instagrams, we've sort of hit a rich seam of finding another new wave of breweries, haven't we? So watch this space, hopefully, for a load of new breweries to talk about in 2024.
Absolutely, we've got lots lined up for you. And my brewery for our triannuary special is called the Old Tree Brewery from West Sussex, and they make kombucha.
Ah, there we go.
So looking forward to that. And that should be very interesting, because I know nothing about kombucha. So we've got them coming on to tell us a little bit about it. So by the end of it, we should know a bit more. We've also got the brewer's wife. We've got the significant numbers of 2023. We're chatting about my recent visit to Edinburgh and the craft breweries I visited up there. We have got tried and tested, but we'll kick off as we usually do, as Dave mentioned a few minutes ago, with Brew to Me.
Daftaboutcraft.
Right, so Dave, who is your Brew to Me brewery on this first episode of 2024?
Well, it's more it's not a brewery so much, it's a bar that have had a beer brewed for them.
Look at him, always bending the rules. Well, I think that's fine. Who is it then?
I've got a beer called Vespers, and this beer has been made specifically for Vespers Belgian Beer Bar in Bury St Edmunds.
Ah.
An offshoot of Beautiful Beer in Bury St Edmunds, which regular listeners will know that I've definitely frequented over the years. Rene, the founder of Beautiful Beers, and his son, and who also look after Vespers, opened Vespers 2 years ago, and Rene has tapped into his roots and his contacts, and he has got himself a beer, classic Belgian blonde ale, brewed for Vespers Belgian Beer Bar, and it's been brewed in Belgium. It's all very much traditional, which is where the roots are, and he's also very good at championing local breweries. Our friends Artifact, who we had on previously, they have all their beers are in there and available in bottles, so very good at supporting local breweries. And I know when I last went into Vespers, they had one of Artifact's beer on tap as well.
Isn't it nice when you start seeing breweries who we've featured on the podcast get their beer into places? I love that.
Exactly. Exactly. And I also remember on a wider scale, this is going back. Do you remember when Daya was really hard to find?
It's going back a while.
Exactly. Well, I always remember that Rene managed to get, I think he had Dust My Broom and Steady Rolling Man. I think it was the first time I'd ever managed to try Daya, and he had cans of it. He's sort of evolved with the scene as well.
So what's this beer like you've got in your hand now then?
So it's a 5.7% blonde. It's got that sort of Belgian yeasty, wouldn't be overpowering, a little bit floral, but it wouldn't have too much of a sort of big complex nose going on. Very smooth. The bottle doesn't give away who brews this.
That was my next question. Who's made the beer?
Yeah, the bottle doesn't give it away. It's classically Belgian, yet at the same time, it's not. You know, when you have those Belgian blondes, sort of Lef, for example, things like that. It's got that yeasty, slightly sweet finish. This doesn't have as much of the yeast.
So this is kind of a certain take on a Belgian beer, so that even if you're not into your Belgian beers, you would probably enjoy this.
It's a very easy way into it, I would say. Just very easy drinking. You wouldn't know it's 5.7 at all. I would quite easily have said that's in the fours.
We should say that before we started recording today, Dave said he was really tired because he's been up at night with a little one and what have you. So if he does sort of slowly start to fall asleep as this nearly 6% beer kicks in and we try other beers later on in the podcast, this beer would have been a catalyst to it. Well, it sounds like it's a good beer anyway. A nice, easy drinking beer. And like we've said time and time again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
I think easy drinking is probably the best way to describe this beer. And I wouldn't always associate Belgian blondes with being easy drinking. I find them quite easy drinking, but as I can appreciate that they're not quite to everyone's taste. This one, as we sort of said, is a nice way in because it's probably just got enough of a twist. So you'd think, oh, that's not come straight out of a Belgian brewery for a Belgian audience, if that makes sense.
Well, thanks very much, Dave. I am going to do my brew to me now, and I am heading to Derbyshire. Derbyshire seems as though it's got a real emerging scene. We've had a Reckless Dweeb on the podcast from Derbyshire, Cryche recently. Quite a scene developing, and there's a bit of a link with both of those to the brewery that I've got today, and the brewery is Dungeon Brewing. Now, Dungeon Brewing has just done collabs with both Reckless Dweeb and Cryche, and has also just purchased Cryche's kit off them. And there's another lovely link here because that kit came from Copper Beach. So it's really doing the rounds. I want to follow this kit for the entirety of its life.
It's lifespan, yeah.
So it started off with Copper Beach, and then it moved to Cryche, and now it's at Dungeon. And the beer I've got is a collab between Cryche and Dungeon. So it all fits in quite nicely, that, doesn't it?
It's that sense of community, isn't it, which we will hear about at length later in the podcast.
Yes, absolutely. So what I've got here is called Infinite Loop, and it's double dry hopped hazy table beer with Centennial, Simcoe, and one of our favourites, Idaho 7. And this is 3.4%. Usual terrible pour. Goes without saying. Oh, nice fruity nose.
Doesn't look like it would taste that fruity, actually. It looks quite Simcoe heavy.
Yeah, it doesn't taste that fruity.
You know you've been doing it long enough when you look at it and go, I can, like the colour and that.
Nice bit of bitterness at the back. Let's just see what it says here. So it says, this table beer has great depth and is full of flavour. Certainly is. A double dry hop of New World hops gives this beer big flavours of tropical citrus fruit. Tell you what, actually, there's a lot of flavour there for 3.4%.
Are you happy with that beer?
Yeah, it's quite decent. I like it. What I do like as well, I should say about Dungeon, because that's a collab between Dungeon and Cryche, is that Dungeon's own cans are all 500 mils.
I do like a 500ml can. Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Look
nice.
at that. It looks nice, doesn't it? We're going to hear from Mark, the driving force behind Dungeon, Mark and his wife. Yeah, well, let's pass over to them now, and they can tell us all about the brewery, and then we'll come back and talk some more.
Hi, so we're Dungeon Brewing. I'm Mark.
And I'm Nat,
Okay, we brew from Hilton in Derbyshire,
from my conservatory,
also known as the
New Dungeon.
Dungeon, that's right. Now, originally the Dungeon was me and my friend Craig home brewing in a dirty old, dusty, damp, cold, dark old garage gym. hence it's like a kin dungeon in here. We just had to be called Dungeon Brewing. Obviously now, as Nat said, we're in the new dungeon now, a little bit cleaner, a little bit tidier, and we started on a Grainfather G70, thinking it was just going to be a slow start to it, and we could, start from there. We immediately grew out of that, really, with a little bit of demand. So we're moving on to a 200 litre system, which should be installed in the next few weeks, all being well.
We've got that from the lovely Lloyd from Crouch.
That's right, yeah. Hopefully, it might be ready to rock and roll by the time you hear this. So hopefully we'll be able to get out a fair few more beers than what we have been doing. So we'll hopefully get these out over Derbyshire, Notts, Staffordshire, and yeah, I mean, these basically at the minute we're doing cask. Not moved on to any keg yet. That is in the pipeline, but again, with a lot of things going off, and since we only started out 6 months ago, there's no particular rush, but as and when we will get there. We do have a can set up.
Getting that web shop set up soon, hopefully, so fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So hopefully, yeah, you'll be able to pick up some cans on there. All that, well, 99% of our cans, 500 millilitre, something a little bit different, a little bit bigger than the normal one you'll see in the fridge there. Obviously the 440ml one, so a little bit bigger can. Nice bright artwork,
which Mark designs himself.
Yeah, I enjoy doing that. So everything we've done is, like I say, designed in-house. We try and be as economical and as green, shall we say, is that the right word? We try and use the spent grain for feeding various animals in different areas, which we have many of. Yeah, either home or fens, farms and such like. And yeah, we brew pales. We've done so far. We've done obviously plenty of pales, IPAs, mild stouts. Yeah, stouts being my personal real love. Is This a Joke is our sort of core stout, available sometimes in different flavours, all of which you'll find on Untapped if you want to have a nosy. So yeah, there's plenty to come from us. As I say, plenty of bright, colourful. You're not going to miss any of our labels and designs. There's one or two funny ones out there. You'll notice a character called Evil Tom, which is a bit of an in-house joke from many years ago about my dad, actually, who can basically turn from being the nicest, kindest gentleman with a flick of a switch to Evil Tom. Evil Tom, exactly. So, that's where that kind of started. So again, you'll see more about him. We've got the original first ever beer we ever brewed as a home brew was called Evil Tom, and that obviously will be getting a big push once we're up and running, and we will actually get that released into commercial. So yeah, that's what we're doing. I'm going down to a 4-day week this year to try and get plenty more beers out there with Nat's assistance. Obviously I couldn't do it without, and that's what we're going to try and do. So and then hopefully just build on. Yeah. And the real dream is to have our own tap room. That's right. Yeah. And have it as very much a community space, somewhere where we can brew our own beer. It's a safe place for people to go, very community based, which is, that's kind of my dream. His dream is the brewing, my dream's the community space. With the coffee and the cake. With the coffee, and of course we cannot forget the cake. No. And Natalie has celiac disease as well, so obviously that's it's basically an autoimmune disease, so we have looked into doing a gluten-free beer, but obviously we're not going to be able to do that until we're at much larger capacity. Due to the testing. That's right. Because such a lot of money to get it tested. It's very expensive. Yeah. But that's definitely a route that we want to take, obviously purely for my benefit. Yeah. But now, like you say, you don't see too many gluten-free beers out there, so that's definitely, as you say, something that we're going to look at. G3 Brewing in not far from us in Burton is a local gluten-free specialist. Look out for a collab between us guys, and yeah, I mean it's good. I do feel bad when Nat can't taste any of the other beers that we do, and it's definitely something that she deserves as well on that front. So yeah, that's something else to look out for. And as you say, the dream, as Nat said, the tap room stroke coffee shop during the day, you know, if we can get the support, and in a few years time maybe that's where we're going to aim to be. So anything else saying that?
No, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone that's supported us so far. We wouldn't have got here without you, and it's definitely a family venture, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, definitely, yeah. Anyone from our family, both sides, you know, we want them to help us, and we've got a couple of teenage sons between us, so, you know, it'd be nice to get them obviously involved in it when the time's right. And yeah, like you say, you know, we don't expect to be rich from this. It's not about the money, as long as we can pay the way.
Bills.
Yeah, pay the bills, and you know, just offer a service and a happy life for us, for you, and anyone who wants to. So, as Nat said, thank you for everyone that's listening to this, and for everyone who supported us. And yeah, keep you know, watch this
Keep
space.
posted.
Yeah, be good. Cheers all.
Bye.
Well, thanks very much to Mark and Nat there. Now, it's interesting. You'll have obviously heard a lot of background noise with that audio, and that's because they were driving as they were recording that. They're in the car. It just typifies how it is for a lot of smaller breweries in that they have no time for anything. Their time is at such a premium. Even when we sort of get in touch and say, oh, you know, can you record this bit for the podcast? People want to do it, but they're really pressed for time. So that's why there was background noise there, but I quite enjoyed that. Reminded me of the one where we'd got Lost Pier. We're sitting on the beach at Brighton and the waves were lapping in the background. But yeah, so it's only been going for about 6 months, so not long at all. And already, you know, the cans are looking good. He does that artwork himself, as he said.
I think we're continually amazed now with how artistic a lot of people are with their can art, and how everyone seems to manage to just find their own take on it, and it all looks awesome. I think I don't know. That's just, as a very unartistic person, I'm probably quite impressed.
Well, no, it is interesting because more and more people we speak to. So, yeah, we did the artwork as well. It's like, whoa.
As if it's no big thing.
Yeah, incredible. Another thing he mentioned in there, he's got a collab planned with G3, who we've had on the podcast, another Derbyshire brewery. They focus on gluten-free beers.
Yes, so they featured us on Brew to Me, I believe.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. Everywhere we look, there's breweries that have been on some part of the podcast at some point. I love it. But yeah, there's a web shop coming soon, as you heard there, and the dream for them, as it is for many people, is the taproom dream, maybe combining it with a coffee shop, as they mentioned. But yeah, I'm really keen to get this 500ml can open as well, and see what that's all about. But as for this one, the collab with Cryche, I've got a bit left there. Let's just try a bit more, because often these beers do develop as you're going along. Right, now that's interesting, because now I'm getting a little bit more fruit coming out of there at the start.
Oh, okay.
I certainly wouldn't put anybody off wanting to get hold of some of those cans. I think you can probably get this through Cryche as well. And like I said, Dungeon will have their own web shop coming soon, so keep an eye on that.
Hi Dave, we Daftaboutcrafters. It's Andy from Daftaboutcraft, sponsor extraordinaire. Just a quick one from us, really, just to say that we have Putty coming in next week. Hype. And if you say hype enough, it turns into tripe. Or is it hype or tripe? Well, for you to decide. We added some Beak this week, some Left-Handed Giant, and also some Track. Last week we got Vault City's 3 Iron Brew specials in, and plus Yonda's Mystery Lager, Stout, and Sour, which they do every January now. Chance to win £250, not through us, through them. We're not made of money, am I? Other than that, we have the some local beers cans in our sales section, with 20% off for the rest of Jan, and also we're doing double reward points until the end of Jan as well. So Philly Boots, hopsathome.co.uk, Hops at Home on socials. I'll see when we'll see you. See you.
This is Daft About Craft.
Throughout the podcast, we're going to be revealing some key numbers from 2023. And we'll kick off with Thornbridge, who produced 8.5 million pints last year. 2.7 of those in cask, 2.9 million pints in keg, 1 million bottles, 3.4 million cans, and 25,000 litres of tank beer.
Get in touch with us on Twitter and Instagram at Daftaboutcraft1.
Well, as regular listeners to Daftaboutcraft will know, we don't just talk about the big breweries on here. In fact, more and more we like to talk about and talk to people who run some of the smaller breweries around the country. We're heading to Manchester now, to Salford in Manchester. We've got Dan Wright from Hideaway Brewing to talk to us. How are you doing, Dan?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me on, chaps.
Not at all. Not at all. I wonder how many people have heard of Hideaway.
Yeah, probably less than you think, and probably less than that again. So we've kind of come out of nowhere. So we're just we're sort of growing a bit of a fan base, which is nice. We get plenty of regulars that are coming in now to the tap room. Onwards and upwards, I guess.
When did you start them?
I was listening to one of your podcasts the other day.
That's what we like.
Again, another 2020 jobby, I think, is one of those. I mean, I've been a home brewer for years, but again, job loss, redundancy presented itself a little bit to the point where I was like, oh, I think I might start a brewery.
I think if you go back in history, 2020 must be the most popular year for starting a brewery, isn't it? Who'd have thought that a pandemic would have done this?
I think it's more a change of mindset. I think, especially for me, it was more about the opportunity to actually explore something that you really enjoy and to think about something that, you know, you might not otherwise have done. And so I think a lot of people kind of realised that it might be a bit of a catalyst for them to do their own thing as well. So I've seen loads of my friends who've started bakeries or other small businesses. So it's nice to see sort of that independent entrepreneurial streak in others. But I think, as we've seen over the last sort of year or so, it isn't that easy.
Dave said about the most popular year. I think before that, it felt like an awful lot. I don't know if these things work in threes, but it felt like an awful lot of breweries started going in 2017 as well, as in getting off the ground. I don't think a lot of breweries that started in 2023 as much. Starting in a pandemic is one thing, but you'd think things would get easier, but it doesn't necessarily feel like they have done of late.
No, and I think it's probably still the same. I don't think it's easy. Ask any of my friends, this is literally the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. When you're doing something by yourself, it is an absolute challenge to sort of get something from nothing to something at some point in time.
And you are a full one-man band. Hideaway is Dan Wright. There is no one else on the books. Well,
there's a wife, Natalie. She's the bean counter, so Nat looks after our finances. And then recently we've managed to get a bit of support in sales and some marketing, and we're trying to sort of grow that area of the business as well. But it is really interesting because coming from a brewer's mindset and the sort of the dream of having a brewery and all of that kind of stuff, it very, very quickly becomes apparent that you're no longer a brewer. You know, right. You are a business owner. Yeah. And so as a consequence, there is a myriad of things that you really, really need to get on top of. Licensing, the ability just to sort of get permissions to do certain things, putting a sign on the side of a building.
I can just imagine all of the brewers listening to this just nodding their head in agreement, thinking, oh, yeah, I always wanted to open a brewery and make beer. And now I run a brewery, but I don't really make much beer because I've got all this other stuff to do. It sort of takes away from what you set out to do in the first place.
Exactly, but I think it just changes your mindset. I think for me, you know, I set out to make nice beer that people enjoy, but now we have a tap room where people can enjoy nice beer, and you can kind of see the culmination of everything that isn't just the beer. It's also the concept, it's also the brand, and that growing in itself. It's so exciting that you don't really get to understand it until you live it. And to see it happening in front of your eyes is amazing.
So you said how hard it was to do all this on your own. Every day's a challenge. Do you ever regret the decision to put all your eggs into that basket and start a brewery?
Oh, every day. Every day.
Yeah.
I live on ibuprofen, coffee and dreams. That's pretty much it. For me, it is just a massively challenging market, but not because of the people in the industry. And I think that's a really good sort of definition to make. When I'm thinking about the people that work in beer, we're also collaborative and share this love for something that, you know, nobody really thinks of it as competition or anything like that, because we're all in this boat that at this moment in time is sinking a little bit. But that's because, as with most small independent businesses, and hospitality massively getting hit at the moment. We're just getting shot at. VAT, where, you've got to remember we are, VAT generating. We don't claim that much VAT back, if any. We operate a business and we still got to pay business rates. The cost of living is quite high, so people can't really justify going out as much. All of that kind of thing. And it is a challenge. But what it does get you to do is sort of hone in a little bit on, what really makes the customer tick. What do you want in your brewery that, other people are going to want? And it's not just about the beer. It's all about, what does your brand say about you? And what does it say about the person drinking the beer? What does it say about them coming to a night at the brewery tap? And it is all about the fact that the beer adds to all these occasions that people are having. It's the cherry on the cake.
It's a really good point, that, isn't it, Dave?
It's a really nuanced take. It's probably one of the most we've had of late from brewers, because, yes, you're all in the same boat, but do you think this is now the next step for those that aren't going to sort of sink in a tough environment, that you've really got to start thinking, oh, yeah, well, you might have nice beer, but if you're not getting the nice beer to the right people, or you're not marketing it correctly, or you're not offering something different to everyone else, it doesn't matter how nice your beer is. It's everything else that goes with it now. It's not just a case of, I've got an industrial unit, here's some beer. There's got to be a bit more to it.
Yeah, definitely. You can have the best beer in the world, but if you're not told anybody about it, what's the point? Mm-hmm. And it's not about spin. You have actually got to have a good product. But we're really honest about it. We're not chucking 40, 50, 60 kilos of hops into our batches of beer. There's no point. We're not trying to compete at that level. It's too expensive for us. We're too small. What we're trying to do is just make good, solid beer that people can have a few of, sit with their family. They can have a really nice time. They can watch some music. They can have something to eat. They can enjoy the party that they're going to because it's their mate's birthday. Whatever the reason, without going to excess. And so we don't really produce high ABV beers. We just want them to be nice, flavorful. I don't want to say run of the mill, but something that isn't really, really way out there, because you've got loads of guys out there who do fantastic sours or pastry stouts or whatever else. I'm not interested in competing in that level.
Your location dictates that you are not going to be able to compete with some of those massive names in the scene. I mean, you've got Pomona Islands, Cloudwater, Track, Sure Shot. They're all there, aren't they? Within a few miles of where you are.
So Pomona Islands around the corner.
Yeah.
And so there's 6 breweries in Salford. And, unfortunately, we've just lost 2. So, we've got 6 of us remaining. The craft beer scene in Salford is actually really good. We've got some great names. So on the same road as us, we've got Hydes, we've got Marble. Literally on the other side of the cemetery, you've got Seven Brothers, you've got Pomona Island, and then you've got Lark Hill up the road with Salford University. Ultimately, everybody produces different beers, and we all offer something slightly different to the customer, and we all have our own names, but we all work together. And so it's so much easier for us to do that and to think about things in the same sort of way and to help each other out and, all of that kind of stuff, because collaboration encourages success. We can't compete with the guys in town in terms of, the closeness that those guys are at. You've got, you've got Sure Shot, Track, Cloudwater, pretty much on the same street. You've got small indies now. So you've got Balance, who are producing some amazing sort of special edition kinds of barrel aged and spont beers. They're showing another side of the industry. But Manchester as a whole is a massive sort of melting pot of brewing. And so the amount of places that you've got that are doing stuff, it's fantastic. And you will always have these big players. But then you've also got the smaller indies, like I say, like Balance, or you've got Courier Brew, Big Trip, knocking out some fantastic cask.
Yeah, really, really impressive.
What else do you want?
Yeah.
It's just brilliant for the customer. There's just more stuff to do. And if we want a short tram ride out into Salford, it's literally a short walk to, 6 breweries?
I'm a big believer that you can never have too many breweries in a small area. I mean, I'm not far from Sturchley in Birmingham, where you've got Birmingham Brewing, Attic, Glasshouse, all pretty much on the same street. And if you go there, when you're like me, you go to all of them. You don't just go to one of them. And I think all these places work alongside each other, and you build a scene, and people will go to all of them and patronise every establishment.
And I think people just get behind it. I'm a firm believer that people buy from people.
Definitely.
That's what it is. We all make beer, we all make something slightly different, and hopefully we cater for 99% of the people that come to where we pouring. They might not like it, but they might like something else. Yeah. So that's the beauty of it.
What you say there about people buy from people, it's a really good point, because when I go to a tap room or a brewery or whatever, I want to see the person who makes the beer and talk to that person. And when you build up a little bit of a relationship with that person, if you go and they're not there, I almost feel as I've missed out because they're not there and I can't talk to them. So it's really important, and you can build up those relationships. I love all that. So I was gonna say, is it a hindrance or blessing being located where you are? But obviously, I mean, you've answered that. Really, it's great for you. It works.
Yeah, there's that attachment there to Salford. It's where I grew up.
And we should ask the question: where did the name Hideaway come from, and where did the artwork come from? Your logo is a fox. So how did that all come about?
Hideaway was because when I started in 2020 and converted the garage at home into a brewery, went through all the processes and stuff. COVID was happening. Everything feels really isolated. My wife was still working, but she was working at home because she was 9 months pregnant. So, it was just a lot of stuff going on, and it was kind of like a little hideaway. So that's kind of where it came from. And, some people would say, it's like a mental health thing or whatever else, but it's not. It's just sometimes you kind of want to be in your own little bubble, get into something, have a passion about something. I think that's just kind of where it came from. It was like a little brewery that we had. And the logo at the time, the initial logo, which is actually on Rusty's shirt, Rusty's our fox, it was the door to the brewery. So that was where that sort of originated from. And then the fox has basically come about because, I wanted something a little bit more, American. I love the tap room sports space and everything that happens in the States. And people kind of get behind it and they want to have a really good time. And, I'm a big baseball fan. And
that makes so much sense. So you look at that.
Now it does, yeah.
You look at that logo and you think, that belongs on the back of a baseball shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of where the concept came from. And then from a fox it's kind of like a family thing that we have is, my little boy's middle name is Fox. And then what we did is, foxes are obviously normally red, but we went more on the orange spectrum because where we live is next to Bridgewater Canal, which is notoriously orange, like neon orange, and it looks like Campbell's soup. But that's because of the iron that's in there, and it's actually because of the rust. So Rusty is the name of the fox. He's orange because of the canal where we're from, and then the logo's on his shirt. He wears a baseball shirt because I like baseball.
Did you design the fox yourself?
Yeah.
Excellent. It's amazing how many people we talk to who do the artwork themselves as well. They're generally creative people. They do the whole gamut of things, not only making the beer, but designing all this other stuff as well. Brilliant.
It's a great outlet. I think everyone's kind of got something in them that they kind of just want to do in the spare time. So it might be, building something or, doing a bit of carpentry, cooking, making beer.
So tell us about your working day.
I've got a inverse day job.
Right, okay.
So, I work in IT. I work pretty much Monday to Friday, 9 to 5.
That's another one we come across, people who work in IT. IT and beer seems to go very well together.
Yeah, it does. I think because everything's quite analytical.
Yeah.
I'm a project manager. For me, it's about organising, taking something from start to finish, that kind of thing. And I really enjoy that kind of thing. And being able to have a bit of a creative outlet in actually creating something that then you get feedback on, but it's something I've made is phenomenal. I love that side of it as well. But yeah, that is my full-time job. And then evenings, weekends, holidays, all in the brewery.
It must be an absolute nightmare to struggle to combine a full-time job and a brewery and a tap room.
And a 3-year-old.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, Dave knows all about that.
Yeah, it is a hell of a lot more work. I'm up early, do a bit of work beforehand, go to work, and then finish my day, and then start my stuff in the evenings, whether it be, organising orders or system setups, which is what I'm in the process of doing now because we're trying to get our online sorted. Doing all of that, and then at the weekends that is sort of brewing, packaging, looking after the tap room, all of that kind of stuff. So there is a lot of hours that go into my working week. And do you know what the idea is? At some point in the future we'll be able to have some staff who can support with that and people who want to sort of be involved. But I'm really lucky because we've got a load of customers who come in and they want to be involved as well.
I think that happens a lot in craft beer. It's such a help to small breweries like yourselves to have those passionate people around you who will help.
And again, it comes back to people buy from people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about bringing communities together. It's about creating a hub. It's about making a safe space. It's, we've got families that come into our brewery who we've ended up being friends with, that, their kids play with my little boy. It's amazing to think that just around my little shed, as it were, that people have started to create community.
I don't think we've probably ever had as detailed an explanation of what it is like to run a brewery and to all that encompasses. But it'd be remiss to actually not talk about the beer itself as well. I missed my opportunity to segue when we were talking about Rusty into a red ale. That is what Dave and I are both having.
It crossed my mind. That was a great chance to start talking about it, but I didn't want to stop you yet.
So, as I say, we're both drinking Rooster, which is the newest Hideaway beer.
It is, yeah.
A red ale isn't... Well, I don't know, because this is what I wanted to ask you, because I have noticed all of a sudden there's starting to be a few more red ales out there. I'm all for it. I really like it as a style. But what sort of led you to want to do one as well?
I'm all about doing different styles anyway. So when we first started, and bear in mind I was using a tiny weeny home brewing kit to then start producing cans for going on the markets and all of that kind of stuff. I used to do all kinds of stuff. So I was doing, we had our first sort of main releases, which were again very sort of American driven. So we've got New England IPAs, got a regular pale, etc. Then I've done sort of Belgian inspired beers, and then I've gone and looked at other styles. So I've done like a Scottish wee heavy, all of that kind of stuff. And it was more about the beer for the season. So, I've done pumpkin beer before now, all of that kind of good stuff. But because we're really leaning into this kind of American-esque sort of slant that we've got within the brewery, red ales are quite popular over there as well. So instead of leaning into the hops for that, we've gone more malty, so the more the Irish red style. For me, it works really well because it's still relatively light. It's 5.6%, so it's nice and easy drinking, but it's got that malty finish.
I think that comes through as well. The can says caramel, and that's what I get. The more you drink it, the more the caramel sort of keeps coming on top without ever getting sickly sweet. It is caramel, and then it's malty, but you can get traditional beers which use the malts, and then it just gets a little bit too much, a little bit overpowering, and you don't really want to go back to it because you know what the finish is going to be. That doesn't happen. Very easy drinking. What do you sort of make of it, Dave?
Absolutely. I'm nearly finished it, and a red ale would not be my go-to at all. Not at all. I said to my wife, he kindly sent us 4 beers, and I said, which one shall I have? And we looked at them, and if I were you, I'd have the red ale. She likes a red ale, so I did, and I'm glad I listened to it. It's really nice, really easy drinking. It doesn't taste 5.6% at all.
Yeah, it's interesting because I tend to ferment out the beers quite well. I think we've got to use the key sort of ingredients, really, the 4 ingredients in beer, as everyone probably knows on the podcast who listens. Just don't mess with it, but just use the best possible thing that you can use for each one of those sort of categories, really. So we don't really use a house yeast. We use the yeast for the beer, and then we look at the malt bill and we say, well, what's going to be the best option here? Where do we want to sort of build flavour in the best possible way? Hops, again, we look at the different parts of the process and where we can add flavour or bitterness, etc., through the process to be able to say, right, well, how is that going to build the flavour profile rather than keeping it in a single place? And then water is obviously really important. We've got fantastic water up here because it all comes from the lakes. So it's super, super similar to Pilsen water. So actually, if we're using it for lagers and stuff like that, we don't need to do anything with it. Super clean.
Wow.
The only thing that we do is we do put a triple filtration on it into the brewery to get rid of any sort of solid matter and metals and stuff, but also mainly chlorine.
Beers you sent us probably highlight what you're getting across as a message. They're different. I know you said at the start there, you've done New England's. I was quite surprised in a good way when we got our beers, and it was a red ale, a West Coast, a milk stout, and an American pale. Not necessarily what I would have expected to see. I would put money these days if we get sort of beers from people, there'd be a session pale in there, there'd be a New England. Essentially, there would be something hazy in there, but you've eschewed that path. It's nice to see, and it goes back to what Dave was saying earlier with where you are. If you did 4 pales with slightly different hop bills, Hideaway's probably going to stay hidden away in Salford, isn't it? So you have to do what you do, and it
and
works.
We're small enough to do that, so we can. We can adjust it as and when we need to. So that's the good thing about it. We're a 12 hectolitre brewery. We can knock out 250,000 litres a year if we wanted to do it. So it's not necessarily the want, it's more the can we sell it at this moment in time? So, we just need people just to try what we're doing. And like I say, hopefully we'll have the online shop coming up soon, and we'll have the tap room back open again and all of that kind of stuff in February. So, and your listeners can do that. But for me, it's really about just showcasing the amazing ingredients that we've got. So we use all our hops from Bath House, and we get those from the States, obviously. So the guys over there really look after us. Our yeast is from WHC. We sort of switch between crisp and muntins for our malt. So, we've got a really great selection of ingredients that we can use. So it's just about showcasing all of that. And, there is a bit where, we could kind of pander to this sells all the time, this sells all the time, this sells all the time. And we are going to have to do a bit of that. So, but we will have a core range, three of which are in the box that you've got, because the last one is being released in February. In our mind, it's about sort of beer for the season. So we've got a fruited wheat beer that's called Melita. So that's actually named after my mum, because she's been a massive supporter of ours as we've been sort of moving through. So that's going to be a rotating fruit flavour that goes through the beers through the seasons. So we'll do maybe 4 different flavours a year. And that's kind of where we want to be. At the moment, we've got raspberry out. We've got Freeway coming out in the spring, and that is one of a trio that we're going to be doing, which is a 4.5% pale hazy job with different hop for each beer. So, the idea is that, we can still do these things and we can still move around with it because we're so small. But it just, for us, it's, we will have to kick out some of the stuff that we know is going to sell, but it allows us to just do some of the stuff that people maybe not heard of as much, but we know people will enjoy.
It sounds very much as though you found your niche, what works for you.
I'm not trying to make 8, 9, 10% IPA. I'm not trying to make something that's been DDH to death. There's so many people that do that really, really well. I don't need to compete with that because we're not on the same level. I don't have £1 million marketing budget. I don't have financial backers. I don't have any of that. For me, it's about trying to make the best of what I've got with the ingredients, and the ingredients that I've got are great. So
your core range. So where will people be able to get hold of that other than your own tap room? Are you in bottle shops around the area? Are you going to expand that out nationally?
That's the idea. We will obviously have keg supply across the UK. So we're currently working that at the moment. Our new kegs arrive on Friday, which will all be branded up Hideaway and have our black and orange on them, which I'm really excited about. And I'm working with the guys at Brew to make it sort of all link in with their scanning software and everything else, which again is phenomenal change to the way that we're professionalizing what we're doing. And I think that's really vitally important for us to do. In terms of our small pack, we're working on adjusting format for that. I've got meetings next week as to how we're going to do that and getting the designs and all of that kind of stuff done so that we can essentially maximize what we've got on shelf space in terms of attractiveness to the customer, how they can purchase, something really quickly, easily, something that is recognizable and that they know that they're going to get consistency every time. So that's kind of where we want to be with it. Customers, sort of tap rooms and all of that kind of stuff, we're now starting to do a bit more reach out. When I was working out of the garage, which I'm sat next to, we had, I think it was 42 stockists in the UK. Bear in mind, I was producing 2 cases every batch. So, it was a lot of work. Yeah. And then now we're reaching out again across the country, especially in the Northwest, Leeds, Sheffield, down Chester way, up to Lancaster. Sort of stay local for a little bit, and then we're sort of branching out a bit more across the country. Anybody can get in touch with us and we'll be able to ship beers to them, not a problem.
And at the time of recording, Taproom is just having a nice refurb of sorts.
Refresh.
Refresh.
Refresh. Because when we opened in August, it was a bit, I want to say, rushed.
With a lot of these things, you must get to a point and think, right, we just want to open the doors now and get people in here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got to do it. Cash flow is king at the moment, and it's really hard. It took me 9 months to convert essentially a shell into a brewery with kitchen space, tap wall, big fridge, bar, booth seating, all of that kind of stuff, new ceilings, all of that kind of thing. And then it just got to the point where I was just like, no, we just need to open. So August bank holidays are our birthday, as it were. So we did all of that. And I think really sort of mid-Feb, we're probably going to do a bit of a little mini relaunch. I'm excited because the changes that we're putting in, that albeit small, actually have a bit of a big difference, and they just make the place feel a little bit more homely. And
I think until you've opened it and you see how the space works with people in it, you don't know exactly what you need, do you?
Equally, things like signage and social media presence and all of that kind of stuff, all of this is getting a bit of a revamp as well, because a lot of places or a lot of people don't really know that we're there. The disadvantage of being called Hideaway is actually, I think it's ended up being a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy where nobody can find us.
You just got to get the word out. I'm sure people will come. Now, I wanted to ask this a bit of a negative sort of question to ask you, but, we've just seen the news this week that North have gone into administration. Purity did recently. Lots of others have. When you see that sort of news, as somebody who runs their own brewery, how does that make you feel? Does that sort of make you think, oh, God, what am I doing? Or does it give you that determination to kick on and make your business succeed?
You've got to think about it in two ways. Hideaway is essentially a lockdown baby, if you want to call it that, right? So we've kind of come through it. Small outgoings. We've grown through the lockdown. We've knew where we were. And then we've kind of taken a big leap after lockdown and then sort of started to grow a little bit, right? So I don't suffer the problem that a lot of places have got. And I'm not, so when I say places, this isn't wholly limited to breweries. This is limited to hospitality across the board, where a lot of places would have taken COVID loans and all of this kind of stuff. And it's a bit of a shackle around your neck, something like that. You don't have a choice, right? You've got to take something like that to keep going. And so nobody would blame anybody for doing it. But when the reality hits, plus the changes that have happened in the last year or so on energy, cost of living, just in general. I mean, the thing with energy is energy impacts everybody, and that goes down the chain. So that's just the catalyst that impacts so much stuff. And so as a consequence, you've got all these people paying off these loans that have got quite a considerable interest rate. You've then got not enough customers coming through the door. You've then got dry January, which whoever came up with that needs shooting. It makes no sense, that the government won't reduce VAT, as an example, because it's needed across the industry. And we've got people like Sasha Lord who are calling for it, screaming for it, and nobody's listening. It makes no sense. We are losing places left, right, and centre. I mean, in Manchester, we lost Black Dog Ballroom, right? Now, whether you go there or not, it's a stalwart of the Manchester nightlife scene. And for somewhere like that to go, so
this is the fear now. But as Dave said, you look at, like, as outsiders looking in, we were talking before we started, and you look at North, and yes, there are two independent things, the brewing and the bars they purchased. But to the people just buy North beer, you think, well, North beer is available in Tesco's. How on earth can these guys be in trouble? Yeah. So if it's affecting, like you say, places where you would think would be just impervious to this kind of stuff, how is everyone supposed to cope if it's...
I don't know necessarily where everyone's impervious to it, and that's the thing. I think, we can all go down that path where we think we're doing the right thing and we take a loan out, we do whatever else. Don't get me wrong, we've done the same sort of stuff, but it literally just does. We don't have a backer or anything like that. So, it is the belief in what you're doing. And we're small enough where we can kind of absorb change quite easily. We don't have to fulfill massive contracts with big four supermarkets and stuff like that. And, there is a bit where we are reliant on our local community. We're reliant on local customers and people going out and coming to see us and all of that kind of stuff. So there is a bit here where it doesn't matter who it's affecting. We're all in the same kind of boat. But the thing that I would say is this, even though I think we've seen North might be in trouble, they're looking to appoint administrators or whatever else, they haven't done it yet. No. So with what we've seen to date about all of this stuff, if we're going to take more of a pragmatic, on the surface of it, to answer your question, yes, it does worry me. It worries me loads. But if everybody goes down the pan and we end up with no breweries, that means you're going to have no pubs. You're going to end up with no restaurant trade. And all everyone's going to drink is Foster's, Stella, whatever, right? That's not going to happen. No. But then we end up in some kind of random dystopia that nobody wants to live in. So you've got to think about that bit. And yes, it is worrying. But if you stick to your guns and you do the right things from a business perspective, you consolidate, you look at how you can reduce your costs, how you can increase your customer base, how you can connect with your customers, that kind of thing. I think that's really important.
It's something Dave and I have talked about a lot. It feels like, and it goes back to what you sort of said at the start as sort of being a COVID business as well. Like, a lot of people had perhaps the entrepreneurial spirit to start something like this, but we've always wondered, people can do it, and yes, you can brew good beer, and the same as you can brew good beer and it not be, you don't shout about it very well, but also, can you brew good beer? Can you run a business?
Oh, they're totally different things.
Yeah.
My background is from a commercial background anyway. So, yeah, I've worked for big businesses before now. And I do think you've got to have that degree of, not necessarily entrepreneurialism, because that's the spirit, right?
Yeah, that gets you the product, doesn't it? But
it's the commerciality of it. You've got to know or learn to learn quick, right? So there's a bit of that. And I'm still learning every day. But there is a little bit of a, do I want to say silver lining? Or do I want to say it's something behind the shadow or the problem or whatever else that is a little bit of a glimmer of hope? Right? Yes, we've got companies, especially breweries, that are maybe medium-sized, right? Maybe going into administration or whatever else. Do they fold?
Yeah.
Or are they acquired?
Yeah.
So these guys and gals who are coming in and they're looking at this as a potential investment, and they are thinking, all right, you know what we'll do? We're a multi-million-pound hedge fund or whatever it is. We're a capital investment company, whatever. We're going to buy this. They don't do it because there's no return.
Well, they see something in it, don't they?
Well, they see something, and I tell you now, it's not going to be the assets.
Well, I was having this conversation, funny enough, last night. You know, a brewery, they don't own their buildings. They're renting them most of the time. They've got some shiny metal stuff in the brewery, but there's no tangible assets, really, is there? There's just...
I mean, brewing equipment's expensive.
Well, it is, but
nobody buys it outright.
Exactly. So all you've actually got is the beer and the name, isn't it?
But you sweat the assets to get the money in and all of that kind of stuff. These people who are acquiring breweries, and these guys are big businesses and they do the due diligence. They don't do it just because of whatever. They know that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so to me, there is a little bit of, and I don't know whether I'm clutching at straws here, but from a pragmatic perspective, I've got to think, actually, there's something going on here where they clearly see that there's going to be an uptick at some point in the future.
Yeah.
So if you can sustain yourself until that point, then you will see
the
it.
storm, and then,
Yeah. And we don't know how long the storm's going to be. And there will be casualties, but what that does is it reduces the competition in market. And I hate to be really quite blunt about it, but that's what's going to happen.
There's parallels to what you say to the industry that both Dave and I work in as well. I've seen it, that it's essentially, if your business model is sound and everyone is working the same way, and as you say, you're working out, is this sensible? Are we making money here? Are we losing money here? How can we trim? Those kind of businesses will weather storms. It's if it's a bit, we have a great product, but we have absolutely... No, not absolutely, but we are not well managed behind the scenes. That's when you struggle. And then
you've got some businesses that have got a crap product.
Yeah.
And they still do fine because the marketing's really good. The sales are really good.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a brand behind you. You've got money behind you that push it because they don't just sell the product. They sell the image.
It's a very refreshing outlook, this, isn't it, Dave? It's fascinating. Look, we could
probably very boring to a lot of people.
Well, look, I don't think so. I think people are going to be
wax lyrical about this for ages.
We don't want to keep you forever, but I've got one last question for you, right? If you could go back in time and tell yourself one lesson that you've learned since you've been going, what would it be? What would you take from the time you've spent in the industry so far?
Don't do it. No, I'm not joking.
Apart from the obvious, don't do it, yeah?
Take your time. I'm quite impetuous anyway. So there is a bit where, you know, we were taking out loans to get the business up and running because at the time we needed to do it, but the timing was bad because it was the time that Liz Truss decided to tank the economy. So we got absolutely stung at stuff like that. Do I regret it? Yeah. But at the same time, looking at it pragmatically, we wouldn't have we would have stopped at that point if that's what we'd done, and we wouldn't be where we are. I think taking your time to really think about the business side of it rather than jumping in both feet and working it out, I think that was really big. I've got to be honest, I would have loved my brother to do this with me, but he's not massive on his beer. He's big on business and all of that kind of stuff. So to do it with somebody in the family and all of that kind of stuff would have been great. Even friends, it takes some of the pressure off. And I think, you know, you've just got to remember that, you know, you're creating something for the long term. So the more you take a step back and you think about it, and you think, is this right for now, or is it going to be right for later as well? That's an important lesson to learn, because sometimes you end up doing something twice, and that's not always the best way. If you just taken 10 minutes to take a step back, then you might have made a different decision. So yeah, I think that's an interesting one. It's a really interesting question.
That was my wife's question.
I was going to say, it felt honestly, it felt too sharp, Dave. I was like, if this gets really well rewarded, you're going to ask everyone this moving forward, aren't you? But at least you've credited Lisa for it.
I said to her, I showed her the list of questions I was going to ask her. She said, "Oh, why don't you ask this one?" Look, if people want to follow you on the socials, and I think they really should, because having listened to this, they'll realise how articulate you are and passionate you are about what you're doing. Where should they head to?
Just look up Hideaway Brewing Co. We're on all of them, and you'll be able to find us. We'll have the website up and running soon, hideawaybrewing.co.uk, and like I say, at Hideaway Brewing Co. for Facebook, Insta, and then Hideaway Brewing for X.
Look, well, we wish you the most success. We've really enjoyed talking to you. Really enjoyed your beer as well. Never thought I'd enjoy a red ale quite as much as I did, actually. It was really good.
Well, I'll take that.
No, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
No, thanks, guys.
Queer Brewing Project. In 2023, they brewed 85,000 litres of beer. They brewed 22 batches, including 14 specials. They sold 1,366 kegs and just shy of 45,000 cans, and they poured at 10 beer festivals right across the UK. Right, well, we're going to find out now what our favourite beer has been since our last episode, as we kick off with Tried and Tested. Dave B, what have you been enjoying drinking?
Well, obviously, since we last spoke on here, Christmas has been and gone, so it could have easily been a Christmas beer because I had plenty, as I'm sure you did too. And the one that stood out over Christmas, because we spoke about it on the episode prior, was, you're going to have some of these sort of big share of beers that you've got knocking around. And I did. I had Harrogate Brew Company's Kersal Imperial Stout, which was really, really good. It was in a 750ml bottle, had it as a sharer. No messing Imperial Stout, nice and chocolatey. It even had a little bit of a sort of Christmas cake taste. And that would have been the winner. However, last weekend, because I've had to decamp briefly and the whole family have moved out and we have moved near to the Edwardstone White Horse, the home of the Little Earth Project. So, of course...
You sure this wasn't like on purpose or anything?
No, for the amount that it's costing to have this decamp, it definitely wasn't on purpose. But what it did mean is, yes, we got the opportunity to go there. So we all went on Saturday. We ate there. We took Bob. We were there a couple of hours. It was brilliant. The beers, as ever, were really good. And they always do it a little bit different on their taps. So, I don't think there was a hazy pale in sight, actually, from what I can remember. It was there was a couple of bits of cask. There was a fair cider range. And, of course, there's plenty of their own beers. And the winner was It's Life Gin Mark II, which is a barley wine. 15.2% barley wine at that.
That's very unlike you to be smashing barley wines on a Saturday afternoon.
Well, I'd seen some reviews of it which were very positive, and I thought, well, I've got to, especially as it's on tap. And it only came in a third, and it only needed to come in a third because obviously at that strength you don't need loads of it. But the colour is probably unlike a colour I've ever seen of any beer. You know, Veronica, what was her surname in the original?
Veruca Salt.
Veruca Salt. Yeah, Veruca. When she turns into a big blueberry and goes that really bruised purpley blue colour, that was the colour of this, which was just unlike anything I've ever seen, really.
Maybe if they're listening a Little Earth Project, they can use that on like the description of the colour on the...
Yeah. Danny and Tom were there. They were in good form. But yeah, the beer itself, it tasted a bit of jam kept being sort of knocked around as a thing for it, and that I'd agree. It was sort of plum jam-esque. Again, there was a bit more fruit in there. There was raisins, things like that. Very smooth and just really, really enjoyable. And if a lot more barley wines were like that, I'd drink more.
Blimey, you've sold that to me. I might have to get on the Little Earth website and have a look. Well, I'm going completely traditional for my tried and tested beer, which is quite unlike me. I'm not a big cask person, but I had this great pint of cask over Christmas at my local pub. In fact, I didn't just have one pint on one occasion. I had 2 or 3 pints of this beer several times over on several different visits. And it was a beer called Dusty Penny, which is a porter from Flipside Brewery in Nottingham, who I must confess I'd never heard of. I think they've got some ties to Magpie Brewery in Nottingham, who I had heard of, but hadn't heard of Flipside, hadn't heard of Dusty Penny. Thought, I'll give this a go. I don't fancy any of the other cask offerings that are on. It was just excellent. Like I say, I'm not even a big cask person, but it was chocolate, caramel, vanilla. You could actually taste hops in there. It did everything I wanted it to. Had 1, 2, 3, and then, like I say, went back again and had some more. Really, really good. That's Dusty Penny from Flipside. The Ilkley Brewery in numbers for 2023. 425 pubs, restaurants and shops were supplied. 9,184 casks and kegs were delivered. 3,634 online orders processed. 2,003 new or first-time customers. 503,041 bottles of beer shipped. 87,322 pints exported.
Daftaboutcraft.
Right, well, it's the time of the podcast now where we welcome Sam from Copper Beach Brewing Company in Worcestershire, and welcome Sam, the brewer's wife. How are you doing?
Happy New Year. I'm all good. You?
Bit cold up here, but apart from that...
You know, you did forewarn me, so I am layered up.
It is so cold sitting up here sometimes, but all these... you never realise when you listen just what it's like, what we put ourselves through for you.
Shivering away in the loft.
We've had a brief talk about what we were going to discuss on this episode. It's sort of a reflection on Copper Beach in the last 12 months, I think.
Yeah, well, even looking a bit further back than that, I think, because I like January. I know some people don't like it as much as months go, but I sort of think it is a really nice reflective month where you kind of feel a bit more motivated. Sometimes you just forget to look back at how far you've come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I was sort of reflecting over, you know, the last 12 months, but then even thinking back further than that to when we first started selling beer to the public, which I think was early 21, and how different it is these days.
Yeah, well, when I first met you, you were in the garden sheds, and had you got a web shop at that point? I think you got the web shop, hadn't you?
We'd just done our first release, I think, that weekend when we spoke to you. But
the web shop opened a month, was it?
Yeah. Literally, we did Friday of the pay weekend when everybody, you know, feels a bit more flush.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just used to open it at, I think it was 6:00 on a Friday, and just let it go until the beer sold out, which was pretty quick in, you know, that first instance. But when, you know, it's all smoke and mirrors, isn't it, a bit with social media? You see all these posts of like, oh, thank you, we've sold out.
Yeah, how much did you have to start with?
I mean, realistically speaking, I can't remember exact numbers, but we would have had, I don't know, 90 cans of each beer or something, and we only had 3 beers, so it's not a huge amount that you're selling out. But yeah, it was quite an exhilarating experience nonetheless, sitting there watching the orders
waiting for the orders to drop in.
Yeah, and we'd always have a bit of a flurry in the first half an hour, and then, you know, maybe a couple an hour after that. And
do you think that as time goes by, you start to take stuff for granted? Because when I see you or Dan, you know, sometimes Dan's phone will ping and there'll be another order just dropping in. And when you started, you couldn't imagine that there'd be orders dropping in left, right and centre all the time.
Yeah, exactly that. And like you said, every time you heard that little ding, it was like, oh my God, someone else has ordered. And yeah, I guess
now it's
it's like, oh, someone's just ordered, you know, which is a nice place to be, that you're not kind of relying on that so heavily that, you know, that's the only way you're selling the beer at the time. But it just makes me laugh, like thinking about, so we would, obviously that would go on from the Friday. We would generally then close the shop on well, it would definitely be closed by the following Friday. And then on that Friday night or the Saturday morning, I would hand pack all of the orders at once. So this could be, I think, about 40 orders maybe. So this was just in our kitchen. I had all the bags and the boxes and the cans ready to go. But every can was accounted for. So it's not like now where you go into our cold room and there's crates of each beer. So you're packing an order and you just know there's enough stock there. This is the beer, these are the bags, and every beer is accounted for.
Don't you drop any.
It's a good job you weren't involved at this stage, isn't it? And then, I remember, I think it was the second or third release, I got about halfway through packing and I'd run out of Half Moon, but I still had several orders that required Half Moon. Oh. So somewhere along the way, I'd read something wrong. But then, of course, you've got all of these bagged up orders, and I'm like, oh God, I've got to go through every single one again.
Do you miss those days?
In a weird, nostalgic way, yeah, because actually life was a lot simpler then.
Yeah, true.
It was a lot simpler then than it is now. But no, I don't miss it from like a practical point of view of having to do that. But yeah, it's just really funny to think that's how it used to run and how far we've come now, you know, sitting here today.
What is interesting is that when you see a brewery's presence on social media, you never think what it's like behind the scenes. And there's a lot of breweries that are much smaller than you are, and that will be how they're operating most of the time, just out of their kitchen or packaging stuff up in their conservatory or whatever. We just tend
As consumers, you just place the order and
you place the order and it arrives. Yeah. It's fascinating to think what does go on behind the scenes.
Yeah. And my Saturday night was spent surrounded by boxes and packaging and beer cans and stress.
Stress. Yeah, but as you move on, you replace that one stress with a different stress, I suppose.
Or several different stresses, you know. But yeah, it did make me laugh thinking of, you know, like, okay, well, we've got all these plans and we're sitting down and we've had planning meetings and we're doing X, Y and Z for the next 12 months and hopefully a lot of things are going to happen for the brewery this year. So you're almost caught up in that whole, like, oh, God, you know, this is going to be such hard work and you can't imagine how you're going to get from A to B. But then when I do look back and I think where we were and how we've got here, and it almost happens naturally without you. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of hard work in between, but the time passes and you get to where you're going. Yeah. And then, like you say, you kind of take for granted where you were. And I just think it's nice to look back and reflect on it.
Absolutely. When you look and you see how much beer you made when you started and how much you make now and how the kit's expanded and how you've got a much wider reach now, all that sort of stuff.
And some of the customers that were with you from that very first web shop that's still drinking your beer now, regardless of how different. I mean, you'll remember when we first were filling the cans and we had a very basic something that Dan had cobbled together to fill them with, and you know, we were can conditioning at that point, so the beer was flat, which meant we had to literally fill the can to the brim and put the lid on so that when the customer at home opened it, it basically exploded. I know we've talked about this before.
Yeah, they were full to the brim. I remember opening those first ones. Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, you know, those customers have seen the beer develop all the way through all the stages, which is nice as well.
And you've still got quite a few customers who buy from you every month, and they've been with you from the start all the way to now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I
love that.
Tony and Helen Matthews, big shout out to them. We love those guys. Every time we bring something new out as well, they're all over it. And yeah, like, it's lovely to have those people in your corner, sort of championing you in the local area.
So as you look back on the last year, what was your highlight for the business in 2023, do you reckon?
Oh, God.
Just to put you on the spot.
It's really easy to just think about all the silly little moments that have made you laugh.
Well, we talk a lot about things that have gone wrong over the time, so I thought it'd be nice to have
something that's gone right.
Something that's gone right.
Hence why I'm struggling to think of one. Do you know what? It sounds silly, but we did so many events last year because it was obviously our primary route to market, way of getting our name out there, and obviously the best way to get revenue at the time. And some of them would be really like disheartening, but then you'd have a couple where you'd kind of not really know what to expect, and you'd go and you'd set up. And there was one event that we did in, I always forget the name of the park. It's in Kidderminster, Brinson's Park, that's it. And it was beautiful weather and it was just such a great atmosphere, and they had music and food and they, you know, all sorts of things going on. And obviously the weather does help these events, but we did absolutely incredible. And with it being in your local town as well, where you're producing the beer and just getting to meet so many local people, I think things like that last year were the highlights, the ones that kind of came out of left field that you weren't really expecting. Yeah. So there was no disappointment and just, all good vibes. It's
weird, isn't it? Sometimes you can go into events with massive expectations and be really disappointed.
Hashtag Himley Hall.
Yeah, I'll bring the mood right down. So I helped Dan out with one event. We're doing a Christmas event in the Cotswolds. We load up the truck to take all the stuff to the market, all the cans, all the tables and the gazebo. But we're on our way there and we suddenly realised the gazebo,
Did you realise it on the way? I thought you didn't realise till you got there.
Well, we were over halfway there. Yeah. So it was like, oh, God, we haven't got the gazebo.
Who noticed first?
Dan suddenly remembered. Then I suddenly thought, hold on a minute, I remember seeing that gazebo on the floor in the brewery. Oh, I probably should have said something then, shouldn't I? So we're over halfway there. So what do? Do we turn around and go back? Or do we go and unload the stuff and I set it all up? So that's what we did. We went,
because you actually have a window of which you're allowed to do that as well, don't you? So if you'd have gone back, you probably would have missed.
Exactly. We wouldn't have had time to go and get the gazebo and go back to the event. So the upshot was we went to the event. Dan dropped me off. I set everything up, bar the gazebo. He went back to get the gazebo, which took about 2 hours round trip. It is freezing cold. It is dark.
Because the gazebo has like festoon lighting, doesn't it?
Yeah,
You wouldn't have had that.
so basically I'm just stood there at the side of the road with a couple of trestle tables and a few cans.
Looking like you just turned up for the crack.
Looking like some sort of, I don't know, homeless guy with a few cans at the side of the street. There's very little branding because, well, that's with the gazebo.
Yeah.
And Dan gets back and I had literally got a face like thunder. He said
How
to
many
me,
cans of beer had you sold at this point, Dave?
oh, I think I'd sold £17 worth of beer.
So,
And it's probably one of those...
do you think it was your face?
Well, this is
or-
it. I always start off with the best of intentions at these events, and you go into it with really high hopes, and you think, yeah, Christmas market is going to do really well. But as the coal starts to bite and nobody's coming to buy any beer from you, you sort of get more and more dejected. And then, you're probably not giving off the right vibes to attract people to the store. So Dan comes back and I said, Dan, this is rubbish. We may as well just go home. He goes, no, let's stick with it. We'll stick with it. We'll get the gazebo up. I said, no, there's no point. Nobody's buying any beer. Let's just pack it all up. And he goes, no, we'll do the gazebo. Within about 5 minutes, there's people everywhere flocking to buy the beer. And I'm just thinking, God, have I literally been putting people off from buying beer?
Basically, your miserable face.
My miserable face.
No one would have seen your miserable face because you didn't have the light.
That's
in,
right. There
so
was
you're
actually,
all right.
yeah, I was sat there in
You
the
were
dark.
under the cover of darkness.
But it can be so disheartening sometimes when people aren't coming to you and you're stood there thinking, God, I just want to sell some beer.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to approach things with the right attitude as well sometimes. But it's not always easy. You go through a lot of lows. And I mean, I just help you out occasionally so I don't see all the other stuff.
Oh, I think Dan debriefs most of them with you afterwards, regardless of whether you're there to experience it firsthand.
But yeah, you get these great highs, but also great lows. And I tell you what, we forgot another great high was the beer festival we did.
Oh, God, yeah. How could we forget that? The Craft Beer Festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're doing 4 this year. That's how much we enjoyed it. So we're doing Bristol, Manchester, Liverpool and Birmingham this year.
Yeah.
It's called the Craft Brew Festival.
There's various stages at which you can buy the tickets. There are the early bird tickets, and then the earlier you buy them, the cheaper they are.
And they're doing it differently this year, aren't they? So last year it was a token system, so you had to pay for tokens and then you use your tokens to buy the beer. But this year you just buy your ticket, a bit like, how other craft beer festivals run. You buy your ticket and all your beer's included.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be even better and bigger this year. So we're really excited for those. But yeah, last year was just insane, wasn't it? How much great feedback you were getting
awesome.
in the moment, and it led to so many connections being made. And yeah, that definitely was, I think that was the highest point actually, now you've said it.
It's always great to see people drink the beer, but when they're people who know craft beer and they know their beers, and to get that great feedback. We were selling the smoked amber there, and we thought, I don't know whether people are going to like this, and they were just absolutely loving it, weren't they?
It's kind of like you said when we were thinking this year about what we're going to take and what we're going to serve. Juicy pails, and they're 10 a penny now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because that's what people do enjoy. But when you go to these festivals, it is always the slightly different beers that people want to try because they know they're going to have a nice pale more or less everywhere.
Yeah.
So you want to have like that something different in your offering, don't you, to show what you can do as well.
Yeah, and people were loving it. Yeah, so we've got that times 4 this year with 4 of those events and hopefully more as well.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Just to look back a little bit further, when you started, did you ever, obviously you wanted to make it a business that could bring you an income. Did you ever... Could you
still
ever...
waiting.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people are, aren't they? Did you ever think it would start to take off as it now appears to be taking off?
I think we didn't anticipate how it would take off, as in like the direction that we would go in. So I think the hope is that we always were going to be able to make it a sustainable business, but just it's happened very differently to I think how I thought it would. And I don't really know about Dan whether he thought, but it is like a rolling stone, isn't it? You just have to kind of keep moving wherever it takes you. Sometimes you have ideas and they don't pan out, or you get opportunities and then it just doesn't happen. So glad I'm still sitting here and we're still talking about it and we've still got the business. And there was a point last year where both of us did not think that was going to be the case, because you've seen how many breweries have gone under. It's a tough market at the moment, but we're still fighting through it. It'd be really interesting actually to go back and listen to when we first spoke to you and just hear what was in our minds and our plans then, and kind of compare it to now as well. But yeah, I kind of feel like the universe guides us where we're supposed to be. And like, you know, you can believe in whatever you want to believe in. This is just me and my loopy brain. But I just think the things that are meant to you do come to you. And I think as long as you're open for the opportunities, they will come. And it's really funny that you say, like, obviously there's points last year where we were like, I don't think we're going to be able to carry on. Money was just running out. You know, I only work part-time now because we've got our daughter, and keeping the roof over our head and paying all of our bills every month has been very difficult some months. But just something will happen and the money will come in, or something comes from an unexpected direction, and it just allows you to keep going. And I just believe that. It
is amazing, actually, how many times that does happen. Yeah. You know, suddenly a customer will come out of nowhere and they want X amount of beer. A pub will get in contact and they want X amount of beer, and you never...
Or even on my side of things, away from the business, like my work, I'll suddenly get a big job that pays out. And yes, I'll get an opportunity that means, okay, right, I can definitely pay the mortgage this month. That's kept happening. And the fact that it's kept happening makes me believe that we are travelling in the right direction, and we just need to keep going through all the hard times, and we'll eventually be sat there going, oh, wow, we made it.
Sat there with your feet up.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Well, it'd be fascinating in another 12 months' time to do this again and look back at what you've achieved in 2024.
And even if it does all go belly up, we'll still sit here and
we can still sit
here and have a chat and see what happened. But yeah,
I'm sure Dan will still be doing daft things that we can take the mick out of him for.
We'll have to rename the segment, but yeah.
Daft about craft.
Tartarus beers in 2023. They produced 93,000 litres of beer, 39 batches. They packaged 142,000 cans. They processed 1,065 web shop orders. They had 13 collaborations, 12 tap takeovers, 14 beer festivals, and 4 international trips. Well, this is the time of the podcast where we'd usually have our feature, Hype or Tripe. Now, we said at the outset of this episode there's a certain beer that shall not be named again that is doing the rounds, is huge hype, but we're not getting involved in that, so there's no Hype or Tripe. Sometimes we do a feature called Any Other Business, but what we're doing this time is a Triannuary special. So everywhere at the moment you see Triannuary this, Triannuary that, don't drink any alcohol, which is, you know, great if you're trying to be health conscious and look after yourself and have a good start to the new year, but it's terrible for the industry that we're talking about. So we're going to do Triannuary, but a Triannuary with a difference, Dave.
Yeah, because if we did it normally, it would be an extension of Brew to Me, but we thought, well, it's not just beer and cider and wine, even though we're not a wine podcast, but you know what I mean. You know, there's other types of alcohol out there. So in the spirit of that, I found DMC Brewery, who make alcoholic ginger beer. Now, I love ginger and I love ginger beer and I love beer, but I wouldn't ever think to have an alcoholic ginger beer. There used to be, I think there still is, there was a ginger beer which was very big, made by a very big brewery, but I do remember having that, and that was just super sweet. Didn't taste of anything. This is very different. This is a venture in Leeds, and it's the brainchild of a husband and wife team, Jez and Ellie. They started it back in 2018. They use only fresh ginger root with natural ingredients, and it's so successful. It's won plenty of awards. You can have a look on their socials, DMC Brewery, and see exactly what they've managed to do. But it's so good that they've got a tap room in Leeds, which I find incredible that you can.
So let me get this right. So it's just alcoholic ginger beer they do. There's no hazy pales, no stouts. It's just the ginger beer.
Now they do an IPA. They have made an IPA with Centennial and Amarillo.
Oh, okay.
I'm just looking at the tap list now. But there's also some guests on, you know, Horseforth, who we know, Brew York, Black Iris, Maracay. Yes, their stuff is primarily ginger beer. They sent me 4 of which are their sort of core ones, and then there's a guest one, which I'll mention in a minute. But the one I'm trying is OGB, which is the traditional ginger beer, and that is 5.2%. And it is ginger, lemon, molasses, their secret blend of spices. The spices stay the same.
Right.
Well, that's always on each can, but the other ingredients differ. So a radia, for example, is lemongrass and lime leaf. Valhalla is orange, cinnamon and star anise. And Shack is chili and cacao nibs. Now, I've got those ones. And I've also got one they've made with a hot sauce purveyor, and it's got Carolina Reaper chili in it, which scares the bejesus out of me.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah, exactly. So I've just poured out the OGB. Now I can smell the ginger. I can really smell the lemon as well, actually. And you can just probably see there. I wasn't quite sure whether it was going to pour hazy or whether quite what it was going to do. But as you can see, it looks like a ginger beer, doesn't it?
Well, it does. It's got that same sort of colour to it, and you can see through it, and sort of like a lager as well, actually.
Yeah, not dissimilar. And I'll just now give it a go. Oh, right, okay. That's brilliant. That is like, well, it's like a ginger beer. It's quite fiery, and I get the lemon. That's really, really good, actually.
So how strong is it, did you say?
That's 5.2, but I would have no clue that was 5.2. I wouldn't even think it had anything in it.
I'm going to say, so if somebody gave you that and said, oh, here's a ginger beer, as in a soft drink, would you just think it was?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is no hint of any alcohol taste in that at all. And that's not to say it's sickly sweet or anything. It's not. It's not got loads of sugar or anything, so it just tastes sugary sweet, so it masks it. It just tastes of ginger and lemon in good quantities.
Wow.
Oh, that's really, really, really good. I'm very interested what the other ones, I sort of listed off there, the chili and cacao, orange and cinnamon, lemongrass, if all those flavours in there are different ones as well, you're going to get a really different taste each time.
So is the hops in this as well?
No hops.
Interesting. It sounds like something that, the whole family could enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to save a bit for the mother-in-law because I know she likes ginger beer as well. So I'll be interested to see what she makes of it. This is really, really good stuff. Amazing
that you can make a business and a tap room just when you're a brewery out of ginger beer.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the product that's front and centre. As I say, they do have, if you want beer, they can do that. And the other thing to note is all their ginger beers are gluten-free and vegan-friendly as well.
Jez was kind enough to send us a voice note telling us about the business and what they do. So let's hand over to him and hear what he has to say.
The OGB is our flagship ginger beer. The recipe is based on the original ginger beer recipe from the 1700s. We brew it with the traditional ingredients of like raw ginger, lemons, molasses. It's crisp, it's fresh, it's fiery, it's a very clean taste. Generally, the one that we recommend to anybody that's taking their first plunge into craft ginger beer.
Well, a nice bit of insight there from Jez. It sounds like that's gone down a storm, Dave. And of course,
I mean, I've nearly finished it. I'm flying through it. It's lovely.
And of course, if it wasn't for Triannuary, we wouldn't be trying these things, and you probably would never have tried it.
No, and as I say, they're doing something right because they won all these awards, and that it just happened to pop up on my socials when I was looking for something like this, and I thought, right, I'll get in touch and see if we can do it. But ordinarily, that would have I never would have thought to have any of that. Now I know. If there's sort of stuff coming up where there's going to be a bit of a family gathering and people might not want beer or something like that, but they still want something a bit different. Like they do a mixed pack, which I think is about £35 for sort of two of each of the four I mentioned. I'd highly recommend them.
I might have to have a look at that myself. That sounds interesting. Well,
I'll save you a can of what I got anyway.
Yeah, please do, absolutely. Well, what I've got is something I know nothing about. We know about ginger beer. We've had ginger beer growing up. We get what that's all about. But I've got kombucha.
Now I know nothing about kombucha.
Well, it makes two of us.
Absolutely nothing. I know it's sort of a bit of an American. I think of it sort of being something that took off in America.
Well, I believe it originated. It may well have taken off in America. It originated in China, and it's getting very, very big over here now because of the health benefits. Gut health is a big, big thing now. I happened to look at a bit of gut health stuff on Instagram the other day. Now my timeline is full of gut health tips and advice. But this is supposed to be really good for you. It's basically fermented tea, sencha tea and Assam tea with a little bit of sweetening, but with natural sugars. Freya down there at Old Tree Brewery, that's the brewery we're talking about here, Old Tree Brewery in West Sussex. She was kind enough to send me several bottles. The bottles are amazing, actually. They look really cool.
Oh, they're nice, yeah. So, quite traditional in a way.
330ml glass bottles. I've got a hop and hemp here, which apparently has been doing really well.
Okay.
Which has actually got Jester and Simcoe hops in it, which we'd be familiar with from the beer side of things.
Mm-hmm.
That's 1.2%. And I've got another one here called Original Sencha, their Original Sencha beer, kombucha beer. We're so used to saying beer, aren't we? This is also 1.2%. And I'm just going to...
So this is where... So the alcohol in this is just occurring from a natural fermentation?
Exactly.
If that came out of a tap in a pub, you'd think, oh yeah, that's a session pale or something.
Session
that kind
pale,
of colour.
Or maybe one of those ciders that don't have a lot of carbonation in them.
Oh, yeah.
There's a little bit of carbonation, but not much. And the sweetness, when I said it'd be sweet, it's like a honey-like quality to it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Is it a bit like a very toned-down version of mead?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that. Yeah, I do like a mead, actually. Yes. Yeah, I see where you're going with that. Yeah. I mean, very toned down, what with it being only 1.2%. But they say it's full of antioxidants and probiotics and live bacteria, and that's where the gut stuff comes in. I mean, let's pass over to Freya, who was kind enough to send us a voice note, and she'll tell you much more about what they do down there at Old Tree Brewery.
We are Old Tree Brewery, a micro-fermentery based near Brighton. Just over 10 years ago, our inspiration to start brewing was born from foraging local hedgerows and wild landscapes. We mostly brew kombucha, which is fermented tea, and it's been getting a lot of hype in the health food world. However, most brands sold are produced in ways which means they're shelf-stable and really good for mass producing, but they're not so good for our guts anymore. We are passionate about gut health, so we keep ours totally live and unfiltered, meaning it's packed with good gut cultures, and is also 1.2%. which a true kombucha naturally is. We love using local and native plants for our flavours, which we steam distill by hand every week. This way we capture all the aromatics and beneficial compounds, but it doesn't affect our base fermentation. We offer 3 permanent flavours throughout the year. We've got hop and hemp, lemon lavender and our original. These are for sale in stores around Sussex and for delivery nationwide. However, we also run pop-up bars across the southeast, where we love to experiment and mix up seasonal cocktails, mocktails and lemonades, using locally foraged ingredients such as sea buckthorn, rosehips, nettle and meadowsweet. We've recently been trialling a herbal kombucha beer inspired by ancient brewing methods, where the native herb mugwort was used as the bittering ingredient, apparently particularly by those labelled as witches, who are thought to be some of the earliest brewers in the UK. So we've called this product witchcraft. We don't tend to compete with beer, as kombucha is such a different product, but our hop and hemp flavour has become a favourite of beer lovers as a lower alcohol alternative. If you'd like to know more, you can go to our website, oldtreebrewery.co.uk, or our Instagram account @oldtreebrewery.
Well, thank you very much, Freya, and thank you also for sending these. I'm trying to be a bit healthier in 2024, look after my gut, because from what I'm reading, everything stems from your gut. If you've got good gut bacteria and your gut's working well, you'll be in good health. So I might well get some more of this. It's really lovely.
And it's not very expensive, is it, from what I'm aware of?
£3 a bottle.
Okay, yeah, so...
And they're 330ml bottles. They do them in 750s as well. I can't remember how much
Do they recommend sort of, should you be having a bottle a day type thing?
Well, this is a good question. I was thinking this, can you sort of overdo it and have too much of it? But I think with the 330ml bottles, they're not going to do you any harm. It's not like they're loaded with sugar either. It's all naturally occurring stuff. There's nothing bad in there. And the thing that they try and do at Old Tree, their aim is to promote better health. Antioxidants, polyphenols in kombucha, which can protect your body from all sorts of damage and inflammation. And it tastes great as well. Yeah, while I'm sort of polishing off the rest of that bottle, we should... another point to raise about Trianuary is that it's not just trying different types of alcohol, different types of beers like we've just done here, but going to different places as well. I was in Edinburgh just recently. For anybody who's never been there and they like their craft beer, I can absolutely recommend you get yourself there. If you go to certain areas, Leith, for example, there's lots and lots of breweries in Leith. We went to, where did we go? We went to New Barns and also Moonwake and Innis and Gunn on a little Friday night tour of the area, and every one of those places was so different yet so good. New Barns was very much, it's a tiny part of a little unit, really high ceilings, so it could be really drafty and cold, but it was actually really lovely and warm, lovely atmosphere, dark furniture in there. It was like you were walking into an old-fashioned pub. It was really nice, really lovely atmosphere. Beers, I mean, the beers wouldn't necessarily be what I'd go for, mainly your type of thing. But they were really good. I've got to say, their fridge was packed full of beers, and it's like £3 a can.
Oof, nice.
I should have.
Their stuff is never very expensive, actually. In fairness to New Barns, I would never sort of have them pegged as being pricey for what they do.
It was a bit of a recurring theme, actually, because wherever we went, the beers were pretty well priced on tap and also in can to take away. Moonwake was a good one. I've never been there before. I've never had any of their beer before, funny enough. So we went there, and it was like a mini Cloudwater. For those of you who've been to Cloudwater in Manchester, go through the door, there's a little shop area in front of you, go up some stairs, and then the tap room overlooks the brewery, and it was very similar to that. Nice atmosphere again, nice and warm. And it's a recurring theme for me. I want a tap room to be warm at this time of year. There is nothing worse than sitting in a cold unit in January or February thinking, oh, I'm so cold, I want to get out of here.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because obviously those units aren't great for heating, and we've talked to enough people on the sharp end of it who I know electricity and heat prices have dropped back a bit, but it's still not cheap to keep those places, the lights on and the heat on. So
yeah, it's a balancing act, isn't it? Trying to keep it warm enough, not spend too much. Now, Dave, have you ever seen a brewery with a brown tourist sign on the road directing you to it?
Not one you'd probably want to go to. The one I can think of, I think, is if you're going to York. I think John Smith's. I think you can. There's a link. There's a sign for the Tagcaster place, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, well, I think they're John Smith's.
But you wouldn't want to go there anyway. So.
Well, we were driving along, we were getting nearer and nearer to Edinburgh, and we were about to come off the motorway, and there was a brown sign, tourist sign, pointing to Stewart Brewing, who we've had on the podcast. I thought, wow, that is the first time I've seen...
That's impressive, yeah.
Yeah. So we followed the signs and ended up in their tap room. Very modern, on an industrial estate, tucked away at the back of an industrial estate. There was a shop area, the brewing area, then sort of a tap room, an eating area, and it was a lovely atmosphere. You know, the kids were welcome in there, the dogs were welcome.
They did make a point when they came on and said about how it was very child friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. There was quite a few families in there just eating as well. You know, there was little booths where you could eat or bigger tables. Really lovely atmosphere, and the guys in there really know their beer as well. Gave us lots of samples and testers of things. It was really lovely. In fact, wherever we went in Edinburgh, the atmosphere was good, and people just wanted to talk about beer, which is nice.
And what was your favourite beer of the trip?
Favourite beer? I didn't expect it to be from Innis and Gunn, but it was. And they're more on the sort of bigger side of craft, aren't they? And the beer was called Rum Cask, which was like a rum infused. And we thought, wow, this is amazing. Let's go and get a bottle of this. Went to the fridge to get one, but they'd turned the tills off, so we couldn't get one. So we liked it so much, we went back the next day and got one. And just the other day, Lisa went to get it off the shelf to have one and dropped it on the floor. So we haven't had it.
I assume you're going to send a clip to Innis and Gunn and hope that they send you some complimentary ones.
Well, I mean, you know, it might be worth a go, or I might just have to go on the website and get some. But it was really, really good. Really nice way to end a little session on the beers in Edinburgh. So yeah, I mean, the point is, it's January. It's trying different things you wouldn't try, going to different places you wouldn't go to, just supporting the industry, really. Neighbourhood Brewco in numbers. During 2023, they made 58,089 litres of beer. They produced 30 new beers, and the total number of pints produced was 102,269. Well, that is just about it for this episode of Daft About Craft. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to listen to us. Much appreciated. If you'd like to get in touch with us for any reason, you can email us at daftaboutcraft1@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram, X and Facebook. But for now, from myself, it's a fond farewell, and we'll see you in the middle of February for episode 56.
Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.